All right, let's go ahead and do this. So today what we're going to talk about is reports. Because I think people are on all kind of different levels that are joining the call. Here we go. What I'm going to try and do as quick as possible, kind of a 10-minute intro to reports, quick on report building, and then really leave it open to any discussion questions that you guys have. If you have things that you're hoping to do or whatever, maybe some of what I talk about, we'll cover that. We'll just see as we kind of move forward, and we can certainly add more calls if we need to. So we'll, yeah. So report terminology, a report is in itself it's going to be a list or a subset of records. So instead of a single record, a single client file or a single family file or something like that, or family record, we're going to be looking at a group of families. And the report can be filtered lots of different ways. So, what the list of records is going to be different depending on the type of filters that you have on that report. The report builder is the tool that actually allows you to build new reports or modify the reports. A report menu is a list of reports that can be frequented often by specific users. And then once you as a user or any of the other users that work with your team modifies their report menu, it will change and it'll be custom for them. And then I think another important term is the toolbar, which on the report itself has a lot of options for how to sort and filter and then to take action with those reports. So using reports, which I'll jump into a report here in a second, is we're going to be able to search, which allows you to filter by any field. There's kind of an advanced search function. The column headings, you can click on any of the column headings that are on the report to sort the entire report by that column, ascending or descending. You can also filter from that column, so you can filter out blank items or records that have no entry in that specific column, or records that do have entry into that column. Again, this is really, I've talked about this in the last couple report webinars. It depends what you're trying to do and achieve with that report, but those options are there for you. You can also access the field properties screen, which we won't really go into today, but it is an incredibly important screen that tells you everything about the system, everything about how that field is used throughout the system. So what reports, auto actions, templates, checklists that field might be used on, what forms it's listed on, modification history, what table, what type of field. I mean, it tells you everything about how that field is utilized. So for me as an admin, and for you guys as admins as well, I reference that screen in the database or in the system pretty frequently to understand how you guys are using it. Then, of course, there are the values on the report, and that allows you, each value, you can click on it to filter by that specific value. You can edit that value, or you can, for some of the values, like if it is a main entity type, you can actually access the record. So if a family or a child or a person is actually listed on that report, you can click and access it. And then on kind of jumping back up to the report toolbar, you can take actions with the report. It's under a link called options, and it allows you to update, insert, edit the report. Let me jump to this next screen. Report options allow you to bulk update records. So you could set all of the records in this subgroup as case stage equals application or home study or whatever. You could insert records, like you could add a communication record for all of them. You can bulk email from there. You can edit the report, and by accessing the report builder, you could also export to Excel. You can print templates. I don't have that listed, but there's a host of things that you can do. So before I go any further here, let's actually jump into my demo site and we can look at reports. So let me keep my time here. The reports are found on report menus primarily. That's the way that I think most users will access them. So every user, when they log into the system, will have from the homepage a report menu. This is, we're looking at my access. So this is my report menu. Every user, again, can have their own report menu, and you can look at help guides and things like that to how to build those and create those for your team if you need them. Each of these reports are links that will take you directly to that report. Report menus could also be found under each tab right now. And there's a report menu, and this is a report menu that is shared for the team. So every time anyone who has access to the family tab would have this report menu. This is going to be a great spot to hold reports that you guys use as a team for meetings. So everybody can have their own computer. You know, there's not really a need necessarily to print reports. You can click and access, and this report would then be filtered the exact same way for everybody every time they access that report. So it's a great way of sharing information. Let's go back to the home page, and I'm going to go pretty basic. Just look at a family report, look at all families, or rather, that's the way that I've got this report titled. Okay, so before I go any further with talking about how reports are filtered, I'm just going to give you kind of a preface of what's going on here again. So the report name is here. You can click and change that. I believe that would be an admin only. There are report stats. These can be added to give you statistics about certain fields and certain ways that you guys are characterizing your records. So in this case, like this is the social worker, and Brenna has she's listed as a social worker on 4 families, which is 24%. You can do other things. We've talked about report stats in other webinars and certainly through help. If you have any questions, there's a lot of things that you can do with that to add other statistics to this. Like we might be comparing families that have fees, and maybe we want to see how many fees, what's the quantity of fees that we've received for a particular program or from a particular social worker, length of placements. There's all kinds of things that you could do. It would be an excellent space for timeline fields when you are calculating the, difference between or how long a process took. So that's report stats. You can click show or hide those. And then the report toolbar that I've mentioned is this up here. I spend a lot of time in search. This is what's going to allow us to do an advanced filtering. So fields that are in the database but are not necessarily on this report can be accessed here. And I have a selection of what table do I want to pull from. So I can choose a table, I can choose a specific field, and I could then, depending on the type of field that I've chosen, I've got a set of operators, and then I can choose a value that I want. So I can say I want to look at all families where the case close date is empty, press save, and I can find that. So we won't talk too terribly much about different types of filters necessarily unless we get into that, but just so that search can be for any field amongst any of the tables that are included on this report. Okay. The options link allows us to see all of the different actions that we can take. I have like developer privileges. So there are some items here that I see that you won't see. They're listed here as dev, but everything else as a full admin of the system, you guys will be able to have access to. So I've talked about real briefly the report configuration, but this is really important to make sure you're talking about apples and apples, not apples and oranges, right? It's that what tables are included on this report and how exactly is this report filtered. So we can see real quickly that the report name, families all, means absolutely nothing to this report because this report is filtered by case stage equals approved and waiting. So I'm actually only seeing families that match that stage right now in this system. And we can also tell how it is sorted. So it's by inquiry received date descending. So the most recent inquiry is right at the top, even though these families are all in the approved and waiting stage. I would say that this report doesn't make any sense necessarily. I mean, it could, but I am probably going to go and adjust this to make this more of all families here. And I'll show you how we do that. But this will, again, when people are saying my reports aren't matching, we've got two different links for different reports, but they're named similarly, this will help you to check that. And so you can use the X boxes to click out of that. Under options, I will talk about report builder really quick, which can be accessed through edit this report. When I jump in here, the one thing that I'm going to do for this is again, take off that default filter because it doesn't make any sense with the report name. The report builder is kind of the backbone. It's how all of the reports are built. There's a lot of things that you can do here, but the report preview, these are going to be the columns that we've selected to be displayed on this report. The tables that are included here, these are, there's hundreds of tables inside of the database. These are the 4 that are important. I've talked about this before with when you're building reports that really need to kind of hone in on what tables are included because the system's kind of calculating everything at this point with reports. So be pretty specific with when you're building a report, what's again the purpose of your report. But we don't need to have 20 different tables on here. We really probably want to keep it to a concise amount. And for example, I don't see in my column headings up here any reports that relate to adoptive child preferences. So if this is kind of a generic, I just want to know about all my families, or I want this report to mail to all my families, adoptive child preferences are insignificant. So I could eliminate that table off the report and not need to have the system try and calculate that as well. There's all these edit links, which will obviously do just that. It allows you to edit that. So I could click here. If I did not want to have adoptive child preferences, I'll click in and I'll uncheck that table. I'll find that. Here it is, because I just don't really need it. If you had fields on the report that included that table, removing that table will remove those fields from the table. I believe, unless there was some kind of bug in the system and it lets you do that, but it should take off any of those columns. So save that. So it's just like a simple change to make. The other thing is through report builder are the default filters. We've talked about that again on other webinars. Default filters are how this specific report is based initially. So again, because it doesn't match my report title, I'm going to edit this and click this off, but it could certainly add to these as well. So this is going to be a filtering tool that's similar if we were searching for families, we wanted to filter the report. This is the same filter tool that's used at least today for other types of things, like if we were creating an auto action and we were narrowing down what records we wanted to relate. But I want to kind of make this literally all families in the system, and we'll see that change. Here's my report stats that I've got. I could add more or edit. I've talked about this, kind of 4 or 5 is a good fit for the screen. But you can have, I believe, like an unlimited amount. It's just going to really scroll your screen out really wide. Default sorting. So how is this going to be organized? How are we going to display the records to the users? And then there's report options. We could show the totals, averages, minimums, and maximums for fields that allow that. So every field doesn't total up, but numbers, currencies, timelines are all really great fields to show those kind of things, and they're relevant, if they're relevant. The records per page, are we showing 20? Are we going to show 100? Are we going to show all of them? The more records that you display, the more Sam is having to calculate all at one time. So what do I want to say about that? It could take a little longer for the screen to load if you have all records and it's looking for like 1,000 records at that point. So just, be mindful of that, but everything shouldn't take, it doesn't take minutes and minutes necessarily. Some databases are pretty large. So showing record counts, this allows on your report menu for the counts of records for each table to be displayed there. So it would show us, I don't know how many families are on this report now, but it would show like 500 families, whatever the number is right there. And then we can decide whether or not we want these field values to be editable directly on the report. It's an option. So I like to leave it open. The last thing that I'll talk about is the report memo. And I honestly think report memos are important because, again, this was titled Families All, but then it was originally filtered to a specific case stage. You might want to add report memos to like, we're using this for this licensing audit, or we're using this for accreditation with IAMI, whatever it is that you're hoping to do with this report, or so-and-so is using this, it's helpful because the system can end up with like hundreds of reports in it. And so you just, you've heard me kind of say this before, but we can really hoard in our systems, and I find it very difficult to find things. We're kind of working on those, but keep it clean. I'm not gonna overbeat that up because I want to have time, and we're quickly running out. Creating new reports, create new report from this one would create a replicate, but then you could have different filters on it. You can add new fields, remove fields, modify the order, and this will allow us to open the report again. There's a host of advanced options, and I would recommend that you play with those. If you don't understand what those do, you can always go to help, and like, what do I want to say? You can copy paste the exact terminology into the search, and probably you'll find a guide on that topic, or connect with me through support. So back on the report, quick things to do. Clicking on the column headings, you can sort. You'll get, this drop down. You can sort, you can filter out, you could search, do more an advanced search by that field to find a range or other things. You can click and view the field properties screen, or you can modify the report. Okay. And then I've talked about editing the report. Where is that? Can I get in here? Can I edit this report? If I click on a value, I can edit the field value, filter by it, or I could exclude. So I've got some different options of things to do. Other things I want to talk about quickly under your options, which again are kind of action items that you can take. You can print the report, which would just give you a print copy. Send bulk emails. And this would send a bulk email to all of these 250 families, or you could send an email to all the caseworkers on the family. Again, it's going to depend on what tables you've included on the report for what options Sam will provide for you, but you can do that. Printing templates. If you've got templates built that, again, are used for either print or email, you can print those things. So this was great for mailing out statements for foster families. You might mail out other things. So, right, whatever it is that you want to do for printing, you could do that. For templates you've got, exporting to Excel, you can take it and put it in something else, create pivot tables or graphs from this. Edit the report will take you to Report Builder, and then you can modify the report from here. Under advanced options, there's some neat things that you can do, which I tend to use a lot. You can print address labels. You can export all the email addresses and put them into another mailing tool that you might be using if you don't do that from SAM. You can also bulk update records. So again, we might filter these down to families that have a commitment date, and then if they have a commitment date, we know they're in an adoption stage, so we might update the case stage. So it'll allow you to clean up your database and have some consistency with it. Bulk insert records will allow you again to add a record, a sub record to these records. And I hear myself repeating record all the time, but databases are full of records. There's the main entity, which is your client, whatever client you're talking about. And then underneath, because there's so much that's being tracked, there's sub records. And that's like communications or documents or counseling notes or placements or adoptions. It kind of depends on what you're trying to add, but you can add sub records to a group of records. And then there is this option to import data. This is typically used for very simple static data that gets entered. I'm not even going to talk about that today. Generally, if you're importing data, will recommend that you work with us, just because once it's in there, now it's in there. And that's never fun if it's done incorrectly. So talk to us when you do that, just because it's more advanced. And now we're so limited on time. Hopefully that's kind of like a quick overview of reports and Report Builder. That's as quick as apparently I can get it done. I want to hear from you guys of what kind of questions do you have about reports? I saw Steve and yeah, okay. I was like, you better talk to me, Steve.
I'm still having difficulty with column width.
Okay.
For example, I understand that we can change them, but when I'm in a report and say that I have maybe a few fields and one of them is a date, and then later on I determine that I need to add a few other things to it. When I add to it, then I would like to modify the width. Sometimes the date field will take up a third of the width of the screen, and I'm trying to get it so that it only takes up what it needs to take up, but it doesn't seem to work very well.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably true. So what he's talking about is being able to adjust how wide the columns are. And honestly, I just don't think it works that great. Under advanced options for the report builder, you can modify column widths, and you get these little blue that you can kind of drag and move. That'll change the column width. If I have less, I have a little bit more option, but we can see like our city is going to be really awkward now. And it kind of, because in this particular report, I've got too many columns for the column widths to work super effectively. I would say hold on it. We are, like play with it as much as you can at this point, because we're doing an interface update. I will make a note that column widths are kind of weird the way that it is, and make sure that that goes into one of our stories when we're updating the interface, so that we focus on how that works. But this is what he's talking about, is under advanced options, modify column widths, you get this. And if I change this, now I've got a little bit more space, or this is really long and you see there's a lot of dead space here. So I could change it again and pull it in, but it kind of adjusts just a little bit. I don't think I have a real effective answer for you right now. It's just kind of a waiting game, but I'll put it as a support or a story, like I said. Will that work for you for now? Sort of. Okay. All right, cool. Anybody else new to building reports, or anyone else maybe have a report? I will have some in my sample database that will somewhat mirror yours, that you're having difficulty maybe with filtering or anything else.
Stephanie?
Yeah.
This is Debbie in California.
Hey there.
And we're supposed to create a report showing what fields we've entered data in. And I'm How do you do that?
Right. Okay. What did I actually have talked to the developer and need to get back with you on that? But what did he say? What did he tell me? Oh, well, he's like, we'll create something new. And that's never the most wonderful thing. So I'm going to go to the home page. Every database in the world is built off tables and fields, and under settings, there's tables and fields. So I think what I told you to do is probably you've got simple data entered today. I think it was primarily foster family data and probably using the foster family case, right? So there might have been like the case type added. It's probably pretty simple just because that's where you guys were. So under tables and fields, my recommendation for you is to pull in, you want to look at the foster family data and go to this specific table. And then here, there's a link on the sidebar called Schofield Stacks. And this will allow you to, it'll calculate in the system all of the records that have any values in them. So you can see this active foster family is a field that's been used 236 times. It does tell me what forms, auto actions, checklists it's been used on, and also like last modification date. So I would probably take this, Debbie, and then you're just going to build a new report. You can probably also start from a report that exists in the system and add columns to it so that you can import or export those out already. And so you're looking at where there are records in it. For example, we don't need to pull this field onto a report because there are no values here. So you're going to have, just because your site is new, less data entry points because they are because it's new, right? Like I think she was primarily adding address fields and contact data and things like that.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So this is what I told you to do the other day, but showing, I think this is helpful for everybody too.
Yeah, I just don't know how to get it on a report. I saw the
Let's
stats. I
see
saw
if-
where we have, 8 families entered, and a lot of the fields are blank. But I wasn't quite sure how to convey that into a report that you're looking for.
Well, actually, it looks like, and I'm not sure if this is going to be, if you guys have this option, but from the table, you could create new form. Oh, no, that's a form. Nope, I don't want to create a form. I want to create a report. So at that point, Debbie, you're really going to go to settings. Like I would have a separate tab up for here with these statistics pulled. Settings, report builder, create new report. And just choose the tables that you're going to pull from. Right? So create a new report, and I would call it like export. And then choose the foster family. I will probably pull on case, because again, I think that that's very likely used. Press save. And so now you've got your table selected, and now going, when you add fields, right, columns to this report, you're going to click on foster family, and you will pull, we're using active family, we're using city, we're using country, whatever fields you're using on here. For you in particular, family name, I think this is, I made mention of this, you won't want to pull family name because you're exporting out. You're going to use first name, parent 1, first name, parent 1, last name, parent 2, first name, parent 2, last name, because those will go into the specific fields. Does that make sense? And so you'll reference this table with the statistics, those that you have data in, and pull those fields onto your report.
Okay.
Let's pull in state. Right? And so once you've got this, it's going to end up taking us to report builder. And so I haven't even touched the family case table. So I will continue adding new records or columns to the report, go to family case and come in here and pull in. Probably you don't need case navigation, but you'll want case worker and inquiry date, whatever fields that have been entered. And you'll just continue to add them on.
Field to report.
And you can always start from a report that exists in the system. Your report list, you could choose. These are ways that you can filter all, because there's hundreds of reports here. This we've talked about. We're going to do some modifications to the search to give you a little bit better functionality even in here in this upcoming version. But we're going to go down to foster family, and if I were looking, for communications, I could pull here, or I just want all foster family reports. And now I don't have to look through all of them. I've trimmed down my list, and you might start from this report because it'll include, it'll include, it doesn't even include the case. So, that would be, then you'd add a new table to the report, whatever. But does that help? This statistics is what I would go by right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other kinds of things? We're past our time, but I'm totally open to being here if you guys have questions. Does anyone have questions about how to filter? Because I know I kind of bumped through it pretty quickly. I think I've got the last 2 webinars have been about report building, search and filter, and then report stats is what we concentrated on. But there's all kinds. Is anybody having difficulty with any filters? Anyone else? There's a bunch of people on today.
To access the aggregate field, we have to first click on totals or averages.
You mean, let me go here to a report that would make sense. Do you mean okay, let me actually show you guys how that works. Let me go to a report of
webinar. You went through it, and I think I had seen it at some point, but it got lost in all the other work that I'm doing on here. But it's not immediately visible, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, let me talk to that point. So I think what you're talking about is totals, averages, minimums, and maximums, like this being shown. And at some points, you might have a column that you want it to show that statistic, but it's not showing that. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about when you're in the options and you're setting up the report, just as a means of narrowing down reports.
So let's talk to this. Okay, so when you go and you edit this report, you can add this, right? So it's a simple click. I could take off minimum maximums. I don't like, for example, on this, I mean, maybe the average actually could totally make sense here, but let's say I no longer want to see average. I can open that report and that statistic will be off now. So now I see the total and the minimum and maximum. Like probably I needed to do the reverse. An average of a specific type of fee would make sense. Minimum, maximum may or may not. It definitely doesn't necessarily make sense in your grader of all fees, right?
Right. I think I might have misspoke. What I meant was to access the aggregate field, that within the report stats.
Like through here, like in the report stats.
When you're setting up the report stats, there was a section where you were able to access.
I'm going to edit this report stat, and then I'll show you guys another thing that's necessary in case the field. Okay, that's okay. So this report stat is set up right now. It's showing fee type, and this is an option that you can do. So this is total. This would be like I don't know, amount per fee type, right? Something like that. Like we can make this more clear to our users of what we're trying to show here. We probably don't really care how many records have this fee type. We probably definitely don't care what's the percentage. That just is unimportant. But then in order to aggregate, so this is a report stat that's showing all the different fee types that we've added into the system, but we want Sam to start totaling for us how much money have we received for each of those fee types, or what's the average, okay? But if I don't have this selected, it will not show. So if I were to save this, yep. So you do have to select one of those in the aggregate section. If I go back, oh, it now has an error. Let's see. Not really sure what the error is. Oh, maybe because of this. I'm not sure what the problem was, but it would, I'm trying to think quick on my feet. Open this report. The fee type will not, what do I want to say? The report stat will not show aggregates unless you choose at minimum one of the options that are to the right of that like vertical line that's there. So for example, like, does any of this make any sense to show? Adoptions finalized in a certain time thing. I bet I could. So there's no aggregates here, okay? Bet there's a timeline field. And so I could say, I want to pull the average now of the adoption time from application to adoption finalized day. So every family that's got a finalized adoption, and now I want to see those in specific years, how long did it take, so we can kind of compare whether we're improving our time to adoption, to finalized adoptions in this year over year. I could pull in the average. Total isn't going to make sense, but minimum and max might make sense here. And then save. And now I will be able to see, well, if Sam would stop giving me an error on these things, we should be able to see that. Why is it causing me a problem? There could be an issue with this field. I can check that. Let's do this. Add a field, and I'm going to pull in the adoption time from an application. Oops, click there. What's happening to me? Go back. There we go. So I'm going to save that to the field so we can see, because there might just be, and what I'm going to do is go to field properties. There might be something going on with this. It's a weird field. What do I have? Is this on my family's all? If I edit settings, did I have another one? I've started to clean these up. So there's just the way that field is built. Let me do this. Advance. This is all getting a little bit out of whack, but what I want is to show you what can be done. So I'm going to end up changing. Lordy. All right, let me do this. I love it. Steve, you always have the hard questions. They're going to push me.
Okay, you don't have to go through the whole thing. I was more or less just wanting to know about how to access that.
Okay, yeah, so it'll only show up, but let me try and show this for people, because this is actually a really cool statistic that's not in the system on a regular basis. So what I'm going to do right now, we're building a new field. So I'm going to call this timeline, because this is my new way of doing this, and this is going to be application to adoption finalized. Okay, and I'm press Control Enter to save through, because I don't need to know anything else. I'm creating a timeline field. I'm going to select that it's a timeline field. And you guys, a lot of this functionality, the way that this prompts you through, will change in this upcoming thing, but the expectation is that's going to be a lot easier to do. So I'm going to choose from the family case, application receive date to the adoption finalized date. Okay, so I'm now creating total days, a timeline, a brand new timeline field. Okay, so that's now in the system. I'm going to go to this family report, and I'm going to actually edit this report stat, and we're going to choose, instead of this aggregate, I'm now going to use the new one, and that should clear this up for us. I think that special calculation just isn't going to work for us anymore. So for each year, even there are things that haven't happened yet in my database, but for each year, what we're seeing now is this is the average time from application to adoption finalized date for adoptions that have finalized in that specific year. So you can see this was a really long year, not a good year, and these don't even make sense, right? And which, even if they don't make sense, that can be super telling for you. Either your calculation's wrong or your data is wrong in the system. So being able to read these reports. Does anybody have questions on this part? This is a definitely more advanced part, and I am happy to talk about that if you have like specific instances that would be helpful to know about. This is a huge part of Sam's reports. I know Justin Walters with Lifeline is on. You'll probably start building reports. Do you have any questions on how this functions? And I think there's some other IT people on as well. Right? So I guess there's only one. Yeah, there's one adoption that finalized in 2020, and so that makes sense. Over here, we've got different. This was just like a year where everything took a really long time. Steve, on this report stat, does that at least answer your question that yes, in order to get the aggregate field that you'd select, you do have to click what type of statistic do you want Sam to calculate?
Yep, I got it.
And right, just I guess to this point is like every option doesn't always make sense, right? Like we don't want to calculate totals on this because we don't really care that it was 8,000 days for 3 adoptions, because that doesn't make any sense, right? It's just an insignificant number because those things were all happening simultaneously. But the average time would make sense. And sometimes totals is going to make sense. Like on fees, the total amount we collected will make sense, right? All of them make sense for that. I'm curious if there are statistics that people would like to pull that they have difficulty pulling. Or even if they're difficulty pulling, like, for example, we've been asked for median to have that as a statistic. So we've got that as a story that, again, once this new interface shows up, we'll be adding to. So median is a statistic that people would like to see. Anything else that anybody can think of? Okay. I would, in this case, this will be our timelines of finalized adoptions or application to, that probably makes more sense, right? And now we'll be able to, as a user, looking at this system, this stat, we'll be able to understand better what we're looking at. All right. So that's my report options. There are not really any questions. I would love to have some of these Q&A. I get asked for them a lot. And I'm super happy to keep doing them if you guys have any. Is there anything else that I didn't really go over that you are dying to hear about? Even simple report things, I think sometimes can lead us into different discussion. Okay. Well then, thank you guys for joining. My next webinar is going to be August 7th. People that are on, there's so many things to talk about. We've kind of covered a lot of things in the last year on different webinars. Is there anything specifically that you would like me to talk about? Otherwise, I'll kind of, maybe we'll hit auto actions or templates. August, yeah, we won't have the interface by August 7th, so we're still using what we've got. So I will just talk to what's there. Does anybody have any ideas for what they want to hear about? Steve, you can tell me. You want to hear something.
We can talk about the interface.
Right. Yes. As soon as I have that, I have access. I will probably do a couple webinars on how that looks. It is exciting. I actually saw for the first time yesterday, it in action, parts of it in action. He's kind of building from custom forms like the auto actions, and we can rabbit hole real quickly into user experience. So we're trying not to do that. So that we get the interface for more mobile friendliness, whether you're internal or external through client forms, kind of up and pushed out, and then talk about user experience stuff. But it is exciting. It's going to be new and different. And there's a lot of ways, again, where Sam will accomplish more through one screen rather than prompt a separate screen for every prompt, which I think is going to be more helpful in you guys administering the system yourself. I will come up with some ideas and pop them out there, and we'll just go with that. I think this time I'm going to send out my screens. They're not super helpful, except that it'll provide you links to the webinars, the report guides, and certainly a link to support at. If you guys have questions about anything that kind of came up today, or you're having difficulty with reports, you can always email us at support at, or click the support link. We love getting links. That's super helpful. Otherwise, we're probably going to push that email right back to you and ask for links. So that's really helpful to get us to what you're specifically looking at. And we will talk to you then August 7th. In the meantime, if you're going to NACAC, wave at me, let me know, or anybody on your team, let me know. I'll be there one day, kind of in and out, but that'll be fun. And I will also be at FFTA exhibiting, so I will actually have a table. If you have the opportunity to get to any of those events, I would love to say hi. Otherwise, I'll talk to you August 7th or through support.